in all England. "What a handy jade it is!" said the locksmith to Mrs Varden, who stood by with folded hands, rather proud of her husband too, while Miggs held his cap and sword at arm's length, as if mistrusting that the latter might run some one through the body of its own accord. "But never marry a soldier, Doll, my dear." Dolly didn't ask why not, or say a word indeed, but stooped her head down very low to tie his sash. "I never wear this dress," said honest Gabriel, "but I think of poor Joe Willet. I loved Joe. He was always a favourite of mine. Poor Joe! Dear heart, my girl, don't tie me in so tight." Dolly laughed, not like herself at all, the strangest little laugh that could be, and held her head down lower still. "Poor Joe!" resumed the locksmith, muttering to himself. "I always wish he had come to me. I might have made it up between them if he had. Ah, old John made a great mistake in his way of acting by that lad, a great mistake. Have you nearly tied that sash, my dear?" What an ill-made sash it was! There it was, loose again, and trailing on the ground. Dolly was obliged to kneel down and recommence at the beginning. "Never mind young Willet, Varden," said his wife, frowning. "You might find some one more deserving to talk about, I think." Miss Miggs gave a great sniff to the same effect. "Nay, Martha," cried the locksmith, "don't let us bear too hard upon him. If the lad is dead indeed, we'll deal kindly by his memory." "A runaway and a vagabond," said Mrs Varden. Miss Miggs expressed her concurrence as before. "A runaway, my dear, but not a vagabond," returned the locksmith in a gentle tone. "He behaved himself well, did Joe, always, and was a handsome, manly fellow. Don't call him a vagabond, Martha." Mrs Varden coughed, and so did Miggs. "He tried hard to gain your good opinion, Martha, I can tell you," said the locksmith, smiling and stroking his chin. "Ah, that he did. It seems but yesterday that he followed me out to the Maypole door one night, and begged me not to say how like a boy they used him. Say here, at home, he meant, though at the time I recollect I didn't understand. 'And how's Miss Dolly, sir?' says Joe," pursued the locksmith, musing sorrowfully. "Ah, poor Joe!" "Well, I declare," cried Miggs. "Oh, goodness gracious me!" "What's the matter now?" said Gabriel, turning sharply to her. "Why, if here an't Miss Dolly," said the handmaid, stooping down to look into her face, "a giving way to floods of tears. O Mim! O sir! Raly, it's give me such a turn," cried the susceptible damsel, pressing her hand upon her side to quell the palpitation of her heart, "that you might knock me down with a feather." The locksmith, after glancing at Miss Miggs as if he could have wished to have a feather brought straightway, looked on with a broad stare while Dolly hurried away, followed by that sympathizing young woman. Then, turning to his wife, stammered out, "Is Dolly ill? Have I done anything? Is it my fault?" "Your fault!" cried Mrs V. reproachfully. "There, you had better make haste out." "What have I done?" said poor Gabriel. "It was agreed that Mr Edward's name was never to be mentioned, and I have not spoken of him, have I?" Mrs Varden merely replied that she had no patience with him, and bounced off after the other two. The unfortunate locksmith wound his sash about him, girded on his sword, put on his cap, and walked out. "I am not much of a dab at my exercise," he said under his breath, "but I shall get into fewer scrapes at that work than at this. Every man came into the world for something. My department seems to be to make every woman cry without meaning it. It's rather hard." But he forgot it before he reached the end of the street, and went on with a shining face, nodding to the neighbours, and showering about his friendly greetings like mild spring rain. Chapter 41. Recording by Deborah Lynn.